Well, Razorback fans, I know everyone's turning the page and getting ready for SEC play coming up against Auburn this weekend, but what can we expect out of the Razorbacks, specifically cleaning up their mistakes? We're going to talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. And we know that as we get closer and closer to the weekend, it's always more about scouting your opponent and looking ahead to the big game that Arkansas is going to be having, their first true road game in SEC play, actually their first SEC game at all. It's going to be against the Auburn Tigers, an interesting game, an interesting matchup between two teams that really need a win. So let's talk about that and a lot more, as it is a THV 11 Tuesday here on the show. So let's welcome in of THV 11. It is Nick Luttrell, who is new to the area, but not new to Arkansas. But Nick, it's good to talk with you. Good to have you on the podcast, man. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well, man. It's an honor to be on here. I've been watching. I started watching Locked On or listening to Locked On podcasts when I went to Syracuse. Actually, listen to it every Friday to get ready for game day, and now I get to be on your podcast, man. I got goosebumps, man. This is great.
Well, I'm glad, man. I'm glad somebody's excited to be on the podcast, at least. You know, it's a big deal
Always.
to you, and we'll take it. We'll take it. So, but we know that with the Razorbacks and the football side of things too, people don't really know what to make of this team. Don't really trust them right now.
Yeah.
Don't really know exactly what to make of it. But looking ahead to Auburn, it seems like Auburn's maybe a team that is similar, where nobody really knows what to make. But what do you think of going into this game, into this matchup, officially at least for Arkansas? What do you make of them, Auburn, together against each other on the road? Like, what's just your vibe right now?
Like you said, I think this is an Auburn team that is similar to Arkansas in some weird ways that I don't think we expected going into this season. I think we expected this game to be both teams to be similar skill types, I guess, at the beginning of the season. I think that's still how we feel, but we've seen two different teams from Auburn and two different teams from Arkansas so far this season. No one likes that Arkansas team that played in the first half against UAB. They like the first half Arkansas team that played against Oklahoma State. And I think Auburn fans feel the same way about how their season is going. Honestly, don't know how they feel about their quarterback situation right now. I wouldn't be very pleased if I was an Auburn fan and my starting quarterback, the guy we're riding with, the team captain, gets benched, and then the backup freshman who you're really excited about has actually played well in their game, on their win on Saturday. So I think their fans have to be feeling very similar to how our fans are, and that we don't really know what's going to happen Saturday. We hope that we get the win. It'd be nice for Arkansas to go on the road and get that win, but would it surprise me if they lost by like 2 touchdowns? Probably not.
Yeah, especially going on the road. That's the thing that I think has gotten Razorback fans so confused, really, is not only just this year, but last year, even at the end of the year before. Arkansas's best games, best performances, best hard-fought finishes, however you want to put it, have come away from Fayetteville. That makes no sense to anybody. But I think that's maybe what some fans are kind of hoping for, that, okay, yeah, you can't do anything about your home performance last week, but there's something to be said about this team when they go on the road. Can you really pinpoint, or what are your thoughts on why Arkansas performs better away from Fayetteville?
I think you just get more motivated. Like it doesn't make sense. One, like we can try to put it together. It doesn't make sense to us. It doesn't make sense to Coach Pittman. Like, he's asked that question in press conferences, and he's like, "Well, I'll be honest with you, I don't really know." And I mean, he's honest. He's honest. You give him credit for that. And from my perspective, I guess it's just going on the road. You have more of a chip on your shoulder. Playing at home, they should be playing better inside Razorback Stadium, but they don't. But playing on the road, I guess you just have that extra chip on your shoulder that says, all right, no one thinks that we're going to go up there and go to the Plains and win by a couple touchdowns. And maybe that's how they're feeling right now. And if there's really a positive that can be taken away from the UAB game, it's that maybe it's good in a way that they didn't win by multiple touchdowns, because then they kind of be just rolling into Auburn and thinking they're going to win by multiple touchdowns. Now they're maybe a little more motivated to go into there and to show up and be like, hey, we're actually better than we showed that we were on Saturday. But it's hard to put my finger on why in the Sam Pittman era of the last 2 or 3 years do they play better on the road than they do at home? I wish I could tell you.
Yeah, I think Sam Pittman probably wishes he could tell you too. But that's what's going up against Auburn is they've not too unfamiliar with each other. Hugh Freeze, of course, being the coach there. And I always like to ask this question pretty much every week, especially if Arkansas say an underdog or if people aren't expecting to win. What if Arkansas wins this game? What's the reaction? What's the impact? What does it do to the fan base and everything? So I'll just ask you, what if Arkansas beats Auburn this weekend in Auburn?
They start out 1-0 in SEC play, and it makes the A&M game a little bigger. Out of all the SEC games, besides I would say Mississippi State is the one that's the lowest level of excitement if they win type of thing. Auburn is a next level up, but it's not like if the Hogs were to beat Ole Miss or Texas later in the year, or even Tennessee. That's a season-changing win in a way. If we beat Auburn, if Arkansas beats Auburn, it's just okay, we kind of did what we expected to do in a way, what some people expected. I think it's honestly a 50-50 game if you look at it from the stats, and I don't know. I think it could be a 50-50 game, and a win would just be okay. Good, we won. Now let's keep trying to prove that that Arkansas is the team that played that first half against Oklahoma State.
We'll talk more about this and specifically get to Taylon Green and the impact that he can have here in this matchup. And we'll do that here in a second. But stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, have you heard about ROY? It stands for Return on You. And it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, that you can help shape rosters and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. And as you all know, NIL has changed the game for all student athletes, and it also changes the game for fans when it comes to ROY. You can directly support players where it allows you to directly back your favorite college athletes. And also, you can play a key role in shaping the future of all of your favorite teams, especially the Razorbacks, since that's what you're listening to, and that's the only team that matters. And while athletes maximize their name, image, and likeness, they get something out of it as well. So it's a very easy thing to do. You just download the ROY app for iOS or Android and enter in referral code LOCKEDON, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash, which I think we could all probably use. So visit and join ROY.com for additional details. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and get into the NIL game with ROY. Support the players, change the game with ROY. Against the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, as we're joined by Nick Luttrell of THV 11 here on a THV 11 Tuesday. So, Nick, the biggest question, of course, is about Taylon Green, the quarterback for Arkansas. Shown signs of greatness. He can beat you with his legs. But there's no doubt that if you're looking at his games, not to say he's regressed, but it certainly did not give a lot of people confidence in his arm and that performance against UAB at home. And not to put it all on him, but we all know it's the most important position on the field. So what do you feel like you need to see from him in this game against Auburn? It's going to be his first true road game in the SEC where it's going to be a wild atmosphere. What do you need to see from him in leading this offense so Arkansas can not only get a bunch of yards, but also get some points out of that yardage too?
John, I'm okay most of the time when he scrambles because he scrambles and he finds the end zone on a lot of great plays. But Auburn is definitely a different type of opponent that the Hogs haven't faced this season. Maybe you could compare them to Oklahoma State a little bit. But what I want to see out of Taylon Green is to throw the ball quicker out of the pocket. I think we can all agree he holds on to the ball a little bit long. I think that worked for him at Boise State a little bit. It's worked for him for the most part, even though watching it, you're like, oh no, what's about to happen? And then he just chunks it, and somehow Andrew Armstrong has come in clutch for a lot of those plays and made some great catches for the Razorbacks. But Green has to get the ball out quicker. I think that's something that might have worked for him previously. and I don't know if it's going to work against Auburn. So I really want to see that in the first few drives, because I expect the Tigers probably to come out and stack the box, because they know this is a Razorbacks team that could run the ball so well. If I'm game planning against the Razorbacks, I'm stacking the box and trying to shut down the run game and make Taylon Green beat me with his arm, which we'll see if he can. I'm not too confident in it right now. But I'd love to see Green go out there and show us what he can do with his arm, because we've seen it with his legs, and he is inconsistent with his arm, but he has shown potential of being really good passing.
Well, one thing too is that I know Sam Pittman talked about on Monday, I guess, was about the running attack and how they want to focus more on that, because even against UAB, I think Juquinny Jackson was averaging almost 10 yards a carry, and Juquinny Jackson's been great. Had some issues maybe fumbling the ball or holding onto the ball, but still, there's no doubt that he's living up to the expectation that he has. And then with Taylon Green, that's going to be the fascinating thing, is if Arkansas tries to establish that run, and if they're able to be successful, I feel like they win the game. But I'm hoping, if Sam Pittman's got some truth to what he said, that they're going to focus more on the rushing attack, because if you got a weapon like Taylon Green and you got a weapon like Juquinny Jackson, even though Andrew Armstrong's a great weapon, Luke Hasz is a great weapon, all these other guys, establishing the run and doing that on the road in a hostile environment seems to be kind of the recipe for success, especially for your team like Arkansas.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's on the road. It'll be a hostile environment, as you said. Maybe not as hostile as some other SEC teams because of the kind of direction that Auburn's program is taking right now. And probably not as hostile as, I don't know, as hostile as Oklahoma State, do you think?
Anything's more hostile than that stadium. Like, there was nothing to that hostility there in Stillwater. Like, I don't know. I've been to a lot of D1 Power 5 opponent places. I was at BYU a couple of years ago in Provo. Mm-hmm. Still, not to hate on it, I have never seen a more disappointing, packed out stadium, where their team's really good, or at least a top 25 team, and have no energy or atmosphere like I saw with Oklahoma State. It was the weirdest thing.
That's interesting, because I remember all talking about leading into that game. It was like, oh, the fans are going to be right over you. They're going to be swinging those paddles and everything. And give credit to Arkansas in that game, because they did quiet that crowd down for the first half. And it sounds like, based on your take on, I mean, you were there, I wasn't, that it was pretty quiet most of the game. And Oklahoma State did not play well. So
yeah, you're not going to have that against Auburn. I don't think. I don't think that's even going to be an issue. They're going to be loud. They're going to be proud. They're going to be crazy. So, we'll get to our final thoughts here in previewing Arkansas and Auburn, and of course, what to expect out of the defensive side of the ball here in a second. So also stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, we know that you've heard us talk about FanDuel each and every day here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. It certainly seems like, but it's America's #1 sportsbook. And, well, we have a little something different for all of you out there that are looking to get involved with FanDuel now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube, as well as YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need to have is a Google account, which I know you all do, and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. It's FanDuel.com. Again, we're joined by Nick Luttrell of THV 11 here on a THV 11 Tuesday. Just a few minutes before we wrap it up here. Nick, just, we talked about a little bit about the offense. Looking at the defensive side, defense looks strong in the early going. But if you actually look at the numbers for the defense, especially ranking in the SEC, it's not good. They're still dead last in pass defense, which is pretty wild in the conference, or at least close to it. I keep forgetting there's 16 teams for 14th. So still not good, but the defensive numbers have not been there, although they do look good at times. They look good against Oklahoma State in the beginning. They obviously look dominant against UAPB, but against UAB, they had some times where it looked like they were the better offense and the defense wasn't physical enough. Sam Pittman said they need to get pressure on the quarterback, but what's the key to getting this defense going and to try to slow down Auburn, which is also a really good rushing attack offense?
You got to get Landon Jackson going. And I will admit, I haven't watched as intensely on the defensive side, specifically on the defensive line when the Hogs are playing, but it doesn't seem like, maybe in the second half, Jackson made a little bit of an impact, but this is a guy who is supposed to be your best defensive player and supposed to be a second or third round draft pick. And I feel like we've barely talked about him this year. We barely heard his name called throughout the game. And he's the leader. He's the leader of the defensive line. He's the leader of the team. I know Sam Pittman does kind of captains by each game, but if there was a captain for the whole team, Landon Jackson would be one of the four guys on there. So I think it starts with him, having him step up, having that defensive line step up. Jackson and the D line have been good on the rushing attack, the defensive rushing attack. But as you mentioned, haven't been able to pressure the quarterback. That was like one of the three things that like kind of everyone wanted to see, or what that I wanted to see out of the UAB game, was they need to sack the quarterback. They need to pressure him. And if you can't do that against UAB's offensive line, I don't know how you're going to do it against Auburn. But they've been so inconsistent. Maybe we do see that a little bit more out of that defensive line unit and out of the defense going into this Auburn game. And kind of another thing, Jackson, as well as, I mean, simple things for the defense, just tackle. I mean, it seems really simple. Like we both learned it playing youth football. Probably it seems so simple, but just wrapping up, just tackling, just back to the basics. I would love to see that out of the defense.
Yeah, who would have guessed that would make you pretty effective as a defense if you learn how to tackle? It's kind of one of the important things to do. So before we wrap up here, though, Nick, I know that everyone kind of gives their own little prediction. You can give a score or what you think, but just how do you think this game goes for Arkansas in their first weekend against an SEC opponent, against Auburn on the Plains this weekend?
I'm going to be more of an optimist here. I think Arkansas wins. I'm going to say they win by a touchdown. I'm not going to throw out a specific score yet. We're on Tuesday, so I still need to do a little bit more research, I feel like. But I do think they win by about a touchdown. I just think we're going to see that Arkansas team that plays well on the road show up and be ready for this Auburn team. And as disappointing as it is that they don't play great at home, at least so far this season and last year and kind of the year before that, they play well on the road. And UAB, they played down to their opponent. Oklahoma State, they played up to their opponent, and I think they'll be ready for Auburn. I think they'll be ready. I do think they'll get the win. So, and which will make, like I said, you asked me earlier, what does this mean for a win? Doesn't mean that much. It just makes that A&M game a little bit more fun, which will be really exciting. The last game in Dallas. Yeah,
and it'll be great. I'm sure if they win it by a touchdown, it'll mean that they gave up a 21-point lead and ended up being closer, because that's what they do. That's what they do. But hey, a win's a win, and they'll take it every single day. But either way, we appreciate you, Nick Luttrell of THV 11. You can catch either Nick or Tyler Cass right here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast every Tuesday for a THV 11 Tuesday. And we're going to keep it going with the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to check out THV 11 as well as at THV11.com for all of their great content down there in the Central Arkansas area. We'll keep it going from there. So for Nick Luttrell, I am John Neighbors. Same sports show, same sports channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you then.